everyone. So I was actually going to work on editing a video about bisexuality because I've seen so many headlines about that and my own experience coming into my pansexuality. However, I just saw these comments and I felt like I just wanted to reply to them. And so you can see them here. So I'm going to read the screen for the folks who cannot see it, and these were both left on two separate videos or photos by the same person, and it says, "How's that vote for Jill Stein really working out for you, Sam?" And the second one says, "Still can't believe you pushed the Jill Stein vote. I hope you have learned now how pushing third party on an extremely consequential vote was the wrong choice. Project 2025 was out there for all of us to read, and you still pushed for Jill Stein," and a middle finger emoji. I don't always like sharing their handles, not that you can't go and find it on your own if you wanted to. But it's really less about the person and it's more about what they're saying, and I just feel like I want to respond to it. For those of you who know human design, my type is called a projector, and so I'm actually meant to wait to be invited to have conversations or share what I have to say. And sometimes if it happens and folks aren't ready to hear it, they'll have really negative reactions to it. So I'm kind of just playing around with this because I think perhaps your decision of whether or not you want to continue listening to it is like your invitation to let me in and hear my words or not, right? So it's your kind of choice or decision whether or not you want to invite me in. So just putting this out there, and I think they're just some important conversations. And obviously the elections we're 3/4 of a year in after the last election, and so sometimes these things still kind of trickle in, and it's no big deal. I think it's kind of something to be able to talk about. And so I pre-wrote myself a list because it's easier for me to kind of process my thoughts when I'm writing them out or typing them out. And so I'm kind of going to refer to my list here, but I came up with 6 main points in response to these comments. Number 1 being, it is absolutely my choice to vote however I want and for whomever I want. And I'm actually going above and beyond by being intentional about it, doing my research, having conversations with different people, and kind of intaking a bunch of different information before I make my decision. I was also a fan and follower of Marianne Williamson's campaign, and obviously she had dropped out, and so I was in this period of seeking out another candidate. And so I'll come back to that at a later point, but basically it's my choice who I get to vote for, and it's my choice to promote or put the content out there that, again, I don't have to do this, but I do. I'm very intentional, or I try to be as intentional as possible. And I also try to do my best to encourage people to do their own research and make their own decisions. And so, what else can I do in terms of promoting people's platforms and their campaigns that the media is obviously trying to silence? Like, I think that it's my duty to help people know who all the candidates are. Like, that only seems fair than to just have 2 people out of how many that are promoted. To me, that's actually less fair. So number 2, you are under the false premise that I just do what other people want me to do or what they want me to think, or that I just watch something in the media or I read something on social media and there you go, my decision is made. No, this was something that happened over the course of months. I think Marianne dropped out maybe in like February or March, and then she came back for a little bit, and then she decided to drop out for good. So the election didn't happen until November. So I had plenty of time to do my research, watch different interviews, see what people were doing, and like I didn't just decide, oh, this person, I give my allegiance to you, and so I'm going to vote for you. So while I was following Marianne's campaign, I was introduced to Dr. Butch Ware, who was Jill Stein's running mate. And even though Jill Stein has been around for a while, I never really followed her. I didn't really know much about who she was until pro-Palestine movement. And they won my vote. Like, that's plain and simple. Kamala didn't. I'm somebody who values authenticity, and I can tell in less than a second if somebody is being inauthentic. And I don't fall for charisma. I don't fall for somebody just reading off of a script that somebody else wrote for them. Like, you can tell that she wasn't really behind the words that were coming out of her mouth. And to me, that's inauthentic. And I just can't support somebody that I can't trust whether or not they're saying what they actually mean. To me, I want to know that who I'm voting for, they truly stand behind their words. And with Dr. Jill Stein and Dr. Butch Ware, like, I believe in their passion for community and that they're willing to go outside of the systems that are currently in place and oppressing communities. I trust their word on that. I feel like they would actually fight for the people. So that went into my decision as well. And don't get me wrong, if Kamala decides to run in the future and she is, who I believe to be the best candidate during that election, I will absolutely vote for her. I'm not anti-Kamala. I am doing what I believe should be done by everyone, which is you have the list of candidates and you research all of them. And so if within that context of the election, she so happens to be, in my opinion, the best candidate, she absolutely has my vote. I have no problem changing my party preferences wherever I need to go in order to elect the people that I fully can stand behind, or at least stand behind more than others. But sorry, she just didn't feel like the best candidate to me at the last election. So yeah, I can't feel sorry for that. I kind of touched on this one already. But number 3 is that you're under the false premise that I force anyone to do anything. So I consume just as much content in favor of Democrats. I consumed some content that was Republican leaning, independent. I heard from some libertarians, and also people who, were like starting new parties, like I think the Unicorn Party. So I did my research. So let's not be fooled that I just saw some news channel and decided, okay, I guess I'm voting for Kamala. Like, no, I'm going to vote with my conscience and who I believe is the candidate that I can stand behind. So if somebody resonates with my stance, like that's totally up to them if they want to follow more. As I mentioned before, I also encourage people to do their own research and to not always just take my word for it, but I absolutely have every right to kind of share my thoughts, just as millions and millions of other people clearly are online, and I was just adding another voice. Number 4. I'm not even mad at this person or a lot of the people who misdirected their shame towards myself and towards others. Obviously, there are always extremists and there are folks that I don't really agree with, and I've never been somebody to be like 100% in on something, because I think like when there are, like, let's just take when we are voting, for example, it's like, how can you expect people to say yes or no to something, but there's like 1,000 points that you have to agree with? So like when it comes to politics, it's like so rare that anybody would stand 100% behind a particular party or a particular person, or, whatever it is. So I know that there were some folks who were a little bit more extreme than, I would consider myself, or, in terms of belief systems or anything like that. But still, like, it's a matter of like a majority of the things I could stand behind in comparison to the alternative options. So, yeah, I'm not even mad at the misdirection of anger, and I'm not gonna go shaming anyone back, which is also why I chose to do this video and not even put, like, because it's not about this person. It really isn't. And, a lot of folks, like, didn't even realize that they were just voting out of fear. They didn't even realize that, there were some blind spots that they have and maybe still have. And I'm not saying that any of us who voted outside of the two-party system are some like enhanced beings or we're more intelligent or anything like that. But, we are just some of the ones who are willing to go beyond the current systems and challenge that because we're not happy with it, clearly. And if, again, the options felt like they were aligned with supporting communities and not just the elites at the top and big money and corporations and institutions and all of that, like, then they would have my vote and they would have had the thousands and hundreds of thousands of other people's votes, like this election and others. Like, you have to understand how manipulative the media has been. And for a lot of us who ended up voting outside of the system, it's because we were woken up to this at some point in our lives. And once you see it, you cannot go back. It is not something that you can just ignore again. Like, seriously. So we have to understand that the media had been and has been extremely manipulative, but we're finally seeing some glimpses of actual journalism that are kind of trying to creep through, because it's really hard to ignore what's happening, especially when people are getting ripped away from their families and they're just families trying to make a living, survive, and provide for their children who are also being zip tied and handcuffed. Like, why is that even a thing? So, we're getting to the point where all of you who are not stepping up and speaking out or, opposing what's happening in whatever way works for you, I mean, you're probably not seeing them. You're probably not seeing the media that you should be seeing. You're probably watching the manipulative stations, and you should go do some research on that and look up the videos literally of kids being detained and handcuffed, like elementary, middle school age children. Like, it's not okay. So if you actually want to be helpful rather than shaming people who are just exercising their rights and they just have maybe a different opinion than you, maybe you can just try having thoughtful conversations with folks, especially those who decided not to vote just because they didn't want to make a decision, not because they didn't have the means or the resources to do so, but the folks who were very capable and just decided not to get involved and not vote. Maybe consider having thoughtful conversations with those who actually voted for Trump. If you weren't doing so already, maybe you can help people get their ballots in if they don't have the means to, with transportation, or maybe they have childcare needs and you can watch their kids while they go drop off their ballots. You can make sure that you're voting in other elections and making sure that our rights are not getting stripped away as we lead up to these elections, and ensure that the essential support and funding is provided for our communities, especially our vulnerable communities, such as the folks with disabilities, folks in rural communities and maybe have lack of transportation, folks in need of translation services, and as I mentioned before, childcare needs. Those things would actually be helpful. Number 5, so statistics have shown that even if you added up all of the votes of everyone other than Trump, he still would have won the popular vote. And we already know historically that somebody can win the popular vote and still not win the election because of the electoral votes. So thank you for thinking that I have way more power than I do, but like, this is a generation, like a multi-generation issue that has been happening under all of our noses, and it isn't until this person was elected for the second time that we're finally starting to see all of the mess that has been hidden this whole time come up. Like, and that is by no means like my fault or my doing, but again, thank you for thinking I have that much power. So yeah, the way that the systems are set up were never meant to support all humans. Like, we already know that. Like, women couldn't even vote for the longest time until very recently. A lot of communities weren't allowed to vote for the longest time. We couldn't even own property. So I don't know why you think that the systems that were created to serve privileged white men would have somehow changed over time. I don't understand that. And the last and probably the most controversial point that I might talk about here is that I'm not really even mad at Trump supporters because of these couple of concepts. One, you can be both a victim and an abuser. And I don't like to blame the victims. And Trump supporters are victims of a system that has been indoctrinating them from before they were even born. They have been born into an institutional corporate interest system that has taught them that if you are a man, especially a white cis man, you come into this world with automatic privilege. And when you are a white or white passing person, you automatically receive a lot of these privileges. You didn't ask for it. And so no one's blaming you that these privileges were handed to you. However, that is exactly what these conversations are about, to recognize where you've gotten in life and how you may have been helped because of how you look on the exterior, and put that in context with other folks who do not have the same outward appearance as you, and how much more effort they've had to put in to receive the same things, if they even have received it, that came like this to you. Whether they were jobs, whether it was money, whether it was a paid for education, whether it was the down payment for your first home, whether it was always having food on the table. There are families who work for an entire month just to be able to afford basic groceries at the Dollar Tree. And the amount that you spend on one entree at not even the fanciest of restaurants, but just an average outing, maybe you're just going out to people, you and a partner or a friend, that one meal might be 1 or 2 months for an entire family of 4. Like, put that into perspective. That is what we're actually talking about here. And so going back to the idea of not wanting to blame the victims, it's about trying to understand their perspective and how they came to those conclusions, and to help educate them in a non-aggressive, non-judgmental, non-threatening way. And that is very challenging for people. Why? Because a lot of us have these little woundings within us from our past experiences. They may have been passed down generationally. It can be really hard to not want to be heard or to force your ideals or values onto someone else. It can be really hard, but that is part of the key here, is to meet them where they're at, not try to overpower them and become a big power struggle. That is not the way. And if you've ever thought about needing help, or there was something that you couldn't figure out and somebody just like aggressively tries to take it from you and say, this is how you do it, like, how would you feel in that moment? Because that's essentially what your values are like doing to these other people, that will automatically put them into like a fight or flight mode or defense mode. And at that point, no one's listening to each other. So progress cannot be made when people are not consciously like aware and in their bodies and like without being in defense mode. So again, these people and these institutions are in power because they made it so for centuries. Like, even think about how the Americas were founded, and, unpopular opinion, perhaps to some, but it's not really the Americas that we're mad at. The Americas came out of Europe. And they came and took the land from the indigenous folks who were already living on these lands and took it from them. So they're really, really good at this manipulation and these tactics to indoctrinate people and create this unwavering sense of allegiance to a savior or some higher power that is somehow going to free them from their situation, not realizing that that same savior or that entity that they are seeking is actually what's oppressing them. And so what are they doing? They are reducing or eliminating altogether essential services and funding for what people need to actually function in society. They are really good at taking away basic needs in whatever way it is, such as housing, such as food, childcare, transportation, manipulating education, controlling and manipulating the media, and they strangely continue to give a lot of power and control to the churches. But maybe we can take out the word strangely, because we all know that these powers love to be friends with other controlling powers with lots and lots of money. And the churches are really good at converting people. And because this indoctrination has been happening for centuries, they've accumulated over time enough people to keep these powers in place and to keep these systems intact. And the folks who are supporting it don't even realize that they are supporting their own oppression, because they think that it's just oppressing other people. They think that it's just oppressing minorities, people of color, the LGBT community, specifically the trans community. But it's only a matter of time before they become directly impacted behind these things, and that is the primary message of all of this. And so going back, they are now leaving the general populations and their kids exhausted, hungry, constantly in survival mode, malnourished, and they take up all their time trying to work just to make all those other things happen. They don't have extra time to research different politicians and people who are in different positions of power. And they may even be tax-paying non-citizens who don't even get to vote despite contributing into the systems. And all of this just leaves them more susceptible to brainwashing and indoctrination. It's just a wheel. We all know this. We all know, especially those who have worked in certain institutions or corporations, they break you down mentally because that's the easiest way to reprogram somebody, and that's exactly what's happening. So no, I don't regret my decision. I disagree with you thinking that public shaming is the solution or helpful. And I encourage you to stop bullying people just because they think differently from you or have different values and different life experiences, especially without understanding any of the context behind my decision or others' decisions. And then you're left with people talking about things with the utmost conviction as if they know what they're talking about. And then on a final note, I leave you with this.
A little hint of what?
A little hint of spiciness, a little hint of soy sauce, a little hint of the tomato, a little hint of the spice.
Tomato in ramen?
Yeah, it actually has a little hint of tomato.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What is a hint?
I don't even know. It just sounds like a good word.